The rainy encounter that changed my life. My name is Ryan Morgan. If you ask me today whether I believe in fate, I'd probably stay silent for a long moment before answering. There's a time when I believed everything happened for a reason. That people never cross paths by accident. That if the universe brought someone into your life, it was because they were meant to make it better. Now I know that fate can give you the most beautiful love story, only to shatter your heart into 1,000 pieces later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. It all began in the spring of 2018. I was 31 years old and living in Seattle, Washington. I worked as a senior software engineer for a large technology company that develops software for healthcare organizations. The job was demanding, but I genuinely enjoyed it. I loved solving difficult problems, working with talented people, and seeing the impact of what we built. My life was calm and predictable. Every morning started with coffee from the same neighborhood cafe. Then work. In the evenings, I would either go to the gym or take a run along the waterfront. On weekends, I usually went hiking, watched baseball, or had dinner with friends. From the outside, my life looked almost perfect. But every evening, when I came home, silence was waiting for me. Sometimes I left the television on just to hear another human voice in the house. The truth was, I wanted a family. I dreamed of coming home to a wife who would ask me how my day had gone. I dreamed of children laughing and running through the backyard. After a few failed relationships, though, I stopped looking for love. I decided to simply live my life. And that's exactly when life made the decision for me. It was Thursday, April 12, 2018. The weather in Seattle was exactly what you'd expect in spring. Dark gray clouds had covered the sky since morning, and by afternoon it had started raining. By evening, it had turned into a full-blown downpour. I had just finished work. It was close to 10 o'clock at night. I walked out of the office building, opened my umbrella, and headed toward my car. Then I heard a loud car horn. Another one. Then another. I turned around. A dark blue Honda Accord was sitting motionless in the middle of an intersection. Drivers were honking impatiently as they tried to get around it. Through the windshield, I saw a young woman desperately trying to restart the engine. The panic on her face was impossible to miss. For some reason, I didn't even stop to think. I closed my umbrella and ran straight into the rain. I knocked on her driver's side window. She rolled it down just enough to speak. "I'm so sorry. My car just died. I've tried everything." Her voice was shaking. "Don't worry," I said calmly. "Let's get your car out of traffic first." She nodded immediately. I asked a couple of nearby pedestrians if they could help. Together, we pushed the car safely onto the shoulder. When it was finally out of the road, she let out a deep breath. "You have no idea how much you just helped me." I smiled. I think anyone would hope someone would do the same for them. She held out her hand. "I'm Olivia Bennett." I shook it. "Ryan Morgan." Her hand was cold from the rain. Her smile, however, was warm. "Well, this is definitely a strange way to meet someone." I laughed. "But it's one neither of us will ever forget." She laughed too. That was the first thing I truly noticed about her. She had an incredible laugh. I called a tow truck. The dispatcher told us it would take about 40 minutes to arrive. Standing outside in the pouring rain didn't sound appealing. Across the street was a small family-owned coffee shop. "Would you like to grab a hot coffee while we wait?" I asked. She smiled. "After tonight? That sounds like the best idea I've heard all day." Inside, the cafe felt warm and welcoming. The smell of fresh pastries, cinnamon, and roasted coffee beans filled the air. Soft jazz music played quietly in the background while rain tapped gently against the windows. At first, we talked about her car. Then about our jobs. Then about life. Olivia told me she had moved to Seattle from Boston just 3 months earlier after accepting a position at one of the city's top architectural firms. She loved historic buildings, photography, traveling, and collecting vinyl records. I told her about my work, growing up in Oregon, and my passion for hiking in the Pacific Northwest. Time seemed to disappear. When her phone rang and the tow truck driver said he'd arrived, we looked at each other in surprise. Nearly 2 hours had passed. It honestly felt like we'd known each other much longer. Outside the coffee shop, I quietly paid the bill before she had the chance. She noticed immediately. "That's not fair." I grinned. "Why not?" "Because now I owe you dinner." I raised an eyebrow. "So, are you officially asking me out?" She laughed, looking slightly embarrassed. "Maybe I am. I'd be crazy to say no." We exchanged phone numbers. As her car disappeared behind the tow truck, I stood there watching until it vanished around the corner. I couldn't explain why, but something inside me told me this wasn't just another chance encounter. It felt like the beginning of something that would change my life forever. The next evening, we met at a small Italian restaurant in downtown Seattle. I was surprisingly nervous, like I was 18 again. But within 10 minutes, every bit of nervousness disappeared. Being with Olivia felt effortless. She laughed often. She had a wonderful sense of humor. She listened with genuine interest. And she never interrupted. After dinner, we spent hours walking along the waterfront, watching the city lights shimmer across Elliott Bay. As we said goodbye, she smiled and said something I'll never forget. "You know, I'm really glad I couldn't fix my car that night." I smiled. "Why?" "Because if I had, we never would have met." Those words stayed with me long after I drove home. The months that followed felt like a dream. We spent nearly every day together. We explored Seattle. We took the ferry to Bainbridge Island. We attended outdoor concerts. We drove to Mount Rainier National Park. We cooked dinner together. We watched old comedy movies. Sometimes we'd simply sit on the couch holding hands, saying nothing at all. And somehow, even the silence felt perfect. A few months later, I realized something that scared me. I couldn't imagine my life without Olivia anymore. After years of believing love simply wasn't in the cards for me, I had finally found the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. What I didn't know was that this beautiful story was slowly leading me toward the greatest heartbreak I would ever experience. Looking back now, I often ask myself the same question. Were there signs that I simply refused to see? Or was everything real in the beginning? I still don't know the answer. What I do know is that, for several years, Olivia made me happier than I'd ever been. Every morning felt like something worth looking forward to. Every evening felt like coming home. About a year after we met, I realized I didn't want to spend another day wondering whether she was the one. I already knew. She was. I wanted to propose somewhere that meant something to both of us. Not on a tropical beach. Not in front of hundreds of strangers. I wanted to return to the place where our story had begun. The little coffee shop across the street from the intersection where her car had broken down. I spent weeks planning everything. I spoke with the owner of the cafe, who happily agreed to help. I bought the ring after visiting what felt like every jewelry store in Seattle. Finding the perfect one took longer than I expected. Not because I couldn't afford it, because nothing seemed worthy of the woman I loved. Finally, I found a simple but elegant diamond ring. The moment I saw it, I knew it was the one, just like Olivia. On the evening of April 12, 2019, exactly 1 year after we first met, I invited her to dinner. She had no idea what I was planning. After we finished eating, I suggested we take a short walk. As we stepped outside, the rain had just stopped. The streets glistened beneath the city lights. It felt almost identical to the night we first met. Except this time, there was no broken-down car. Only two people whose lives had become deeply connected. I reached into my jacket pocket. My heart was pounding, so hard I could barely hear myself think. I dropped to one knee. "Olivia." She immediately covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes before I had even finished speaking. "A year ago, a broken car brought you into my life. I thought I was helping a stranger that night. I had no idea I was meeting the woman who would completely change my world." I took a deep breath. "You've become my best friend, my greatest supporter, and the person I can't imagine living without. I don't want to spend another day calling you my girlfriend." I opened the ring box. Olivia Bennett. Will you marry me? She burst into tears. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she nodded over and over again. Yes. She laughed through her tears. Yes. Of course I will. The people sitting inside the cafe had been watching through the windows. The moment she said yes, applause filled the room. A few strangers even stepped outside to congratulate us. It was one of the happiest nights of my life. We spent the next several months planning our wedding. To be honest, Olivia handled most of it. She loved every detail. The flowers, the music, the invitations, the decorations. Watching her talk excitedly about every little decision made me smile. I'd never seen someone put so much love into planning a single day. Our wedding took place in October 2019 at a beautiful vineyard just outside Seattle. The weather couldn't have been more perfect. Blue skies, a gentle breeze, golden autumn leaves everywhere. When the music began and Olivia started walking down the aisle with her father, I completely forgot that anyone else was there. All I could see was her. She looked absolutely breathtaking. When she reached me, she smiled through happy tears. I remember whispering, "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." She quietly replied, "And you're the man I've always prayed for." During our vows, we promised each other something simple. No matter what life threw at us, we would always tell each other the truth. Neither of us imagined how important those words would become years later. Married life was everything I had hoped it would be. We bought our first house together in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't luxurious. But it was ours. Every weekend we worked on making it feel more like home. Painting walls, planting flowers, building bookshelves, choosing furniture together. Those simple moments became some of my favorite memories. We cooked dinner together almost every night. Sometimes we'd dance in the kitchen while waiting for the pasta to boil. Sometimes we'd argue over which movie to watch. Those tiny disagreements always ended in laughter. For the first time in my life, I truly felt complete. In early 2020, Olivia surprised me with news that changed everything. I had just come home from work when I noticed a small gift box sitting on the kitchen table. Inside was a tiny pair of baby shoes. Underneath them was a folded note. It read, "You're going to be a dad." I stood there staring at the note for what felt like forever. When I looked up, Olivia was standing in the doorway, smiling. I wrapped my arms around her. Neither of us said a word. We simply held each other while tears rolled down our faces. It was one of the happiest moments of our lives. A few weeks later, we went in for the first ultrasound. The technician smiled as she looked at the screen. "Well," she laughed. "I hope you're both ready." I frowned. "Ready for what?" She turned the monitor toward us. "There are 2 heartbeats." Olivia grabbed my hand so tightly it almost hurt. "Twins." The technician nodded. "Congratulations." We looked at each other and started laughing. At the same time, we were both completely terrified. Neither of us had expected that. But neither of us could have been happier. As we walked out of the hospital that day, I looked at Olivia and smiled. Our lives are about to change forever. She squeezed my hand. I wouldn't want it any other way. At that moment, I truly believed we had everything we could ever need. A loving marriage, a beautiful home, and 2 little miracles on the way. I had absolutely no idea that one day everything we had built together would begin to fall apart. When people ask me what the happiest day of my life was, they usually expect me to say it was my wedding day. But honestly, it wasn't. The happiest day of my life came several months later. It was the day I became a father. The pregnancy went surprisingly well. Of course, Olivia had difficult days. Morning sickness, back pain, sleepless nights. But she never complained for long. Every evening after work, I made dinner while she rested on the couch. On weekends, I drove her to every doctor's appointment. I read parenting books, watched videos about newborn care, even practiced installing the car seats over and over again because I was terrified of doing something wrong. Olivia loved teasing me. "Ryan," she'd laugh, "I think you've read more baby books than the doctors." "I just want to be ready." She would smile and squeeze my hand. You already are. As the due date got closer, our house slowly transformed. One bedroom became a nursery. We painted the walls a soft light gray, hung tiny stars from the ceiling, built 2 identical cribs. Every little detail mattered. One evening, while we were folding tiny baby clothes, Olivia suddenly became quiet. She picked up a pair of newborn socks that looked impossibly small. Then she looked at me. "Do you think we'll be good parents?" He sat beside her. "I don't know." She looked surprised by my answer. I smiled. "But I know we'll spend every day trying our best." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I think that's enough." In July 2020, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because Olivia gently shook my arm. "Ryan." Her voice sounded calm. Too calm. "I think it's time." I jumped out of bed, so fast that I nearly tripped over my own feet. She started laughing. "Please don't panic before we even leave the house." "I am not panicking." "You grabbed your backpack upside down." I looked down. She was right. We both laughed all the way to the hospital. After several long hours, the doctor finally smiled. "Congratulations. You have a healthy baby boy." Before I could even process those words, another cry filled the room. And a healthy baby girl. I couldn't stop crying. Neither could Olivia. The nurses placed both babies in our arms. Our son was sleeping peacefully. Our daughter immediately opened her eyes, as if she wanted to examine the entire world. "Have you picked names?" one nurse asked. Olivia looked at me. I nodded. "Our son is Noah. Our daughter is Emma." The nurse smiled. "Beautiful names." I looked down at my children. I had never experienced a love so powerful. In that moment, I silently promised them something. No matter what happened in life, I would always protect them. The following years passed faster than I could have imagined. Life became wonderfully chaotic. There were sleepless nights, countless diaper changes, baby bottles at 2 in the morning, toys scattered across every room in the house. But somehow, those became my favorite memories. Every Saturday morning, I'd make pancakes while Noah and Emma sat in their high chairs laughing at everything I did. Every Sunday afternoon, we'd visit the park together. Olivia loved taking hundreds of pictures. She said she never wanted to forget these moments. Looking back now, sometimes I wonder if she knew they wouldn't last forever. By 2023, the twins had become inseparable. Noah was calm and thoughtful. Emma was fearless. She climbed everything, asked endless questions, and somehow always convinced her brother to join whatever adventure she had planned. One afternoon, I found them covered in flour. The entire kitchen looked like it had exploded. Emma smiled proudly. We made cookies. There wasn't a single cookie anywhere. Only flour, eggs, milk, and 2 tiny faces covered from head to toe. I couldn't stop laughing. Olivia walked into the kitchen, looked around, and laughed even harder than I did. Those were the moments I believed would last forever. Life wasn't perfect. No family's life ever is. We argued sometimes, usually about small things. Money, work schedules, who forgot to buy groceries, who was supposed to pick up the dry cleaning. But every disagreement ended the same way. One of us apologized. We hugged and moved on. That's what marriage looked like. Or at least, that's what I believed. Toward the end of 2024, something slowly began to change. At first, it was almost impossible to notice. Olivia became busier at work. Her architecture firm had landed several major commercial projects. She started staying late at the office. Sometimes she'd come home after 9, sometimes even later. She always had an explanation, a client meeting, a deadline, a last-minute design revision. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I trusted my wife completely. As weeks turned into months, those late nights became more frequent. Then came the business trips. Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, sometimes just for 2 days, sometimes almost a week. She apologized every time. "I hate leaving you and the kids." I kissed her forehead. "We'll be fine." And we always were. The twins adored having movie nights with Dad. We built blanket forts in the living room, ordered pizza, watched animated movies. Those weekends became our little tradition. Still, something felt different whenever Olivia came home. She looked exhausted, distracted. Sometimes she smiled while looking at her phone, then quickly locked the screen when I walked into the room. I told myself I was imagining things. Everyone gets stressed. Everyone has difficult months. I refused to let doubt enter my mind. One evening, while we were having dinner, Emma looked at Olivia and asked an innocent question. "Mommy, why are you always working now?" The room became completely silent. Olivia forced a smile. "I'm working hard because I love you." Emma nodded, but I noticed something. For just a second, Olivia looked away, almost as if she couldn't bring herself to hold our daughter's gaze. That tiny moment stayed with me. I didn't know why. I just couldn't forget it. A few weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night. Olivia wasn't in bed. I walked downstairs. The lights were off, but through the kitchen window, I saw her standing alone on the back patio. She was talking quietly on her phone. When she noticed me, she ended the call almost immediately. "You scared me," she said. "Sorry. Who were you talking to?" She answered without hesitation. "My project manager." At 1:30 in the morning, she looked tired. "We have a deadline." I nodded. It sounded strange, but not impossible. I kissed her forehead. "Come back to bed." She smiled. "I'll be there in a minute." As I walked upstairs, a strange feeling settled in my chest for the first time in our marriage. I couldn't explain why, but something didn't feel right, and I had no idea that the truth was already much worse than anything I could have imagined. People often ask what betrayal feels like. Some imagine it's a single moment, one shocking discovery, one conversation, one confession. But that's not how it happened for me. Betrayal doesn't begin when you learn the truth. It begins long before that. It starts with small changes you can't explain. Long silence, forced smiles, late nights, excuses that sound believable because you desperately want to believe them. I ignored every warning sign because I loved my wife and because I trusted her completely. About 2 weeks after I found Olivia talking on the patio in the middle of the night, life seemed to return to normal. She spent more time at home. We had dinner together. She played with Noah and Emma. We even planned a weekend trip to the mountains. I remember thinking, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe work had simply been stressful. I wanted to believe that. More than anything. One Saturday morning, Olivia asked me to drive with her to a furniture showroom. She wanted to replace the dining room table. The twins stayed with my sister for the afternoon. While we were walking through the store, Olivia received a phone call. "I'll be right back," she said. She stepped outside. A few minutes later, her phone vibrated again. She had accidentally left it on the sofa next to me. Normally, I would never touch someone else's phone. Not hers. Not anyone's. Then the screen lit up. A message appeared. There was no name. Only a heart emoji. The preview read, "I miss you already." My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe a family member. Maybe. Before I could finish that thought, another message appeared. I can't stop thinking about last night. Everything around me seemed to disappear. The sounds inside the showroom faded. My hands started shaking. I picked up the phone. For several seconds, I just stared at it. Every part of me wanted to put it back down, because I knew, if I opened those messages, my life might never be the same again. Then I remembered something. Months earlier, Olivia had asked me to unlock her phone while she was driving. She had never changed the passcode. Without thinking, my fingers entered the numbers. The phone unlocked. I opened the conversation. I wish I hadn't. The first thing I saw was a photograph. Olivia, smiling. A selfie I had never seen before. Below, it was his reply. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met." Then her answer. "Careful. My husband might get jealous." Followed by a laughing emoji. I felt sick. I kept scrolling. Message after message. Picture after picture. Plans. Hotel reservations. Romantic dinners. Inside jokes. Nicknames. Words that she hadn't said to me in months. Then I saw the date. The conversation had started almost 3 months earlier. 3 months. 90 days. Well, I believed my wife was working late. She had been building another life with someone else. My eyes filled with tears. But I couldn't stop reading. I needed to know everything. One message made my stomach turn. Him. I hate pretending you belong to someone else. Olivia, just give me time. Things will work themselves out. Another. Him. Did your husband suspect anything? Olivia. Not at all. Ryan trusts me completely. I stopped breathing. That sentence hurt more than every other message combined. She wasn't only lying to me. She was laughing at the trust one had given her. Then I saw something that completely shattered me. A photo. The two of them together. Standing outside a hotel in downtown Seattle. She was kissing him. The timestamp showed it had been taken on a Wednesday evening. I remember that night. She had called me. I'm sorry, Ryan. The meeting is running late. Don't wait up. That evening, I had fed our children, helped Noah with his puzzle, read Emma her favorite bedtime story, and, after they fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room waiting for my wife to come home. She hadn't been at work. She had been with him. I don't know how long I sat there. 5 minutes. 10. Maybe longer. Then I heard footsteps. I quickly locked the phone and placed it exactly where it had been. Olivia walked back inside. She smiled. Sorry. That took longer than I expected. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time in years. I couldn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. She asked quietly, Ryan, are you okay? I forced a smile. Yeah. I'm just tired. She nodded. Let's go home. The drive back was silent. She talked about furniture, colors, weekend plans. I barely heard a single word. My entire world had collapsed. And she had no idea that I knew. That night, after the twins were asleep, I sat alone in the garage. I cried harder than I ever had in my entire life. Not because my marriage was ending. Not because she had betrayed me. But because I kept thinking about Noah and Emma. How do you explain something like this to children? How do you tell them that the family they love is falling apart? I couldn't imagine their pain. And that hurt even more than my own. I barely slept. The next morning, I looked at Olivia across the breakfast table. She poured cereal for the kids. She laughed when Emma spilled milk. She kissed Noah on the forehead. She looked like the perfect mother, the perfect wife. If I hadn't seen those messages, I never would have believed the truth. But now, I knew exactly who she was when I wasn't looking. I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to accuse her without thinking. And I wasn't going to let my emotions control me. If my marriage was truly over, then I would make sure the truth came out, no matter how long it took. What I didn't know was that confronting Olivia would become the beginning of the biggest battle of my life. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the messages, the photographs, the lies. I kept asking myself the same question over and over again. Why? If she was unhappy, why didn't she just tell me? If she had fallen in love with someone else, why didn't she leave? Why spend 3 months pretending everything was normal? There were no answers, only silence. For the next 3 days, I acted as if nothing had happened. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every morning, I kissed my children goodbye before work. I smiled at Olivia. We ate dinner together. We watched television in the evenings. She laughed. She joked. She looked completely relaxed. Meanwhile, I felt like I was living beside a stranger. At night, after everyone had gone to bed, I replayed every conversation we'd had over the past few months. Every business trip, every late meeting, every excuse. Everything finally made sense. On the 4th evening, I couldn't pretend anymore. The twins were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. Olivia was reading on the couch when I walked into the living room. I stood in front of her. "We need to talk." She looked up. Her smile disappeared immediately. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath. "I know." She frowned. "You know." "What?" "I know about him." The room fell completely silent. She didn't say a word. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. Then she slowly put her book down. "You went through my phone." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "I did." "You had no right." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No right. You've been cheating on me for 3 months. And you're worried about your privacy?" She crossed her arms. "You invaded my personal space." I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because I was in complete disbelief. "My personal space?" "Olivia, you were kissing another man while I was putting our children to bed." She looked away. Finally, she spoke. "It just happened." "No, it doesn't just happen. You made thousands of decisions that led to this." She remained silent. Then she quietly admitted it. "Yes, I've been seeing someone." Hearing the words out loud hurt even more than reading the messages. "Who is he?" She hesitated. Then answered. "His name is Daniel." "How long?" "You already know. 3 months." I nodded slowly. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" "I don't know." That answer crushed me. She hadn't even thought about it. I sat down across from her. "Was any of it real? Our marriage? The life we built?" She looked at me. "It was real." "Then why?" She rubbed her forehead. "I was tired. Work. The routine. I felt invisible." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Invisible. "I came home every day. I helped raise our children. I supported your career. I loved you. What exactly was invisible?" She had no answer. Instead, she became angry. "You think you're perfect?" "I never said that." "You worked all the time too." "Sometimes I felt alone." I nodded. "Then you should have talked to me. I would have listened." "I always listened." She looked down, deep inside. I think she knew I was right. Then everything changed. Her expression became cold, almost emotionless. She stood up. "You should stop digging." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "My parents won't let you destroy my life." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. My father has connections. My mother knows judges, lawyers, politicians. If you try to take this to court." She stepped closer. "You'll lose." For a second, I honestly couldn't believe what I had just heard. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. You have no idea who you're fighting." I looked into her eyes. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the Olivia I had married. She wasn't the woman who once cried with happiness when I proposed. She had become someone I no longer recognized. I quietly picked up my wedding ring, placed it on the coffee table. I never wanted to fight. I only wanted the truth. She didn't answer. I walked upstairs, opened the twins' bedroom door. Noah and Emma were sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that their parents' marriage had just ended. I stood there for several minutes, making myself another promise. No matter what happened next, I would protect them. The following morning, I contacted a divorce attorney. I didn't tell Olivia. Not yet. I explained everything. The messages, the photographs, the affair. Then I told him something that kept replaying in my mind. She threatened me. The attorney leaned back in his chair. "Did she threaten you in writing?" "No." "Were there witnesses?" "No." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then don't react emotionally. Document everything. Every message. Every expense. Every trip. Every conversation. If she's lying, eventually she'll make a mistake." As I left his office, I realized something important. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about protecting my children and protecting myself. That evening, I returned home with a completely different mindset. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt Olivia. But I also wasn't going to let fear control me. She believed her family's influence made her untouchable. She believed I would give up. She was wrong. Very wrong. I had spent my entire career solving difficult problems one piece at a time. This would be no different. From that moment forward, I quietly began collecting evidence. Every receipt, every hotel reservation, every unexplained trip, every lie. I didn't realize it yet, but those small pieces would eventually become the evidence that changed everything inside a courtroom. And when that day finally came, the truth would speak louder than any threat ever could. People think the hardest part of betrayal is discovering the affair. It isn't. The hardest part is waking up the next morning and realizing that life doesn't stop. Your children still need breakfast. Bills still need to be paid. Work still expects you to show up. The world keeps moving, even when yours has completely fallen apart. After speaking with my attorney, I made one promise to myself. I wasn't going to let anger make my decisions. Every step I took had to be careful. Every action had to be legal. Most importantly, everything had to be for Noah and Emma, not for revenge. For them. For the next 2 weeks, I lived what felt like two separate lives. During the day, I was simply dad. I took the twins to preschool, made breakfast, read bedtime stories, laughed at Emma's endless jokes, helped Noah build towers out of wooden blocks. Whenever I looked at them, I reminded myself why I couldn't give up. At night, I became someone else, someone searching for the truth. My attorney recommended hiring a licensed private investigator. At first, I wasn't sure. It felt strange, almost wrong. But after everything I'd already seen, I knew I couldn't rely on emotions. I needed facts. A few days later, I met Michael Harris, a private investigator with more than 20 years of experience. He greeted me with a firm handshake. "I'm sorry you're going through this. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "So do I," I replied. He listened carefully as I explained everything. The late nights, the business trips, the messages, the photographs. When I finished, he remained quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "If she's still seeing him, they'll make mistakes. They always do." The investigation began the following week. Michael never gave me unnecessary details. He simply told me to live my life as normally as possible. If something happens, I'll call. Waiting became torture. Every time my phone vibrated, my heart raced. Days passed. Then one afternoon, Michael called. "I think we have something." We met at his office that evening. He placed a thick envelope on the desk. "I need to warn you. Some of what's inside will be difficult to see." I nodded. "I understand." He slowly opened the envelope. The first photograph showed Olivia leaving her office. Nothing unusual. The second showed a black SUV pulling up beside her. She got inside. The third photograph showed them arriving at an upscale restaurant. The fourth showed them holding hands. I looked away. It still hurt, even after everything I already knew. Michael slid another photograph across the table. "This man is Daniel Foster." I stared at the picture. He looked confident, well-dressed, probably in his early 40s. He works as a real estate developer. Michael continued. "We've confirmed they've been meeting regularly. Hotels, restaurants, private apartments." He handed me a printed timeline. Every meeting, every date, every location. My hands trembled as I read it. Some of those evenings, Olivia had told me she was working late. Others, she had claimed she was attending conferences. Instead, she had been spending time with him. "There's something else," Michael said. He opened another folder. "Financial records." I looked up. "What about them?" "Your wife has been using a joint credit card." I frowned. "For what?" He turned the pages toward me. "Luxury hotels, weekend spa reservations, expensive restaurants, designer gifts, thousands of dollars, money from our shared account, money we had planned to save for our children's future." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. She had been using our family's money to support her affair. A week later, Michael called again. "This time, you need to see it yourself." He gave me an address. I parked across the street just before sunset. Michael was already waiting. He pointed toward a downtown apartment building. They're inside. We waited. Nearly an hour passed. Then, the front doors opened. Olivia walked out. Daniel was beside her. They were laughing. He wrapped his arm around her waist. She kissed him. Not quickly. Not awkwardly. It looked natural. Comfortable. Like they'd done it many times before. I felt something inside me finally break. Not anger. Not jealousy. Hope. Whatever hope I still had disappeared in that moment. As we drove away, Michael remained silent. Finally he said, "I'm sorry." I looked out the window. So am I. Over the next month, the evidence continued to grow. Photographs, receipts, hotel confirmations, phone records obtained through legal discovery after my attorney began the divorce process. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The affair wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a single bad decision. It was a relationship that had been carefully hidden for months. One evening, after putting Noah and Emma to bed, I organized every document on my dining room table. Each photograph, each receipt, each report, each lie. When I finished, I realized something. I no longer needed to convince myself. The evidence spoke for itself. For the first time since discovering the affair, my emotions weren't controlling me anymore. Facts were. And facts are much harder to argue with. The following morning, my attorney reviewed everything. He looked up from the files. "This is solid. But there's one problem." I frowned. "What?" He closed the folder. "Olivia's parents. They've already hired one of the most expensive law firms in the state." I wasn't surprised. "What does that mean?" "It means they're preparing for a fight." He leaned forward. "And Ryan, if they can't beat the facts, they may try to attack your character instead." As I left his office that afternoon, I realized the hardest part was still ahead. The evidence was finally on my side. But the battle was only just beginning. There's one thing I learned during the months that followed. The truth alone isn't always enough. Sometimes, people with money and influence will do everything they can to bury it. I was about to find that out the hard way. About a week after my attorney reviewed all the evidence, Olivia moved out of the house. She rented a luxury apartment in downtown Seattle. The twins stayed with me most of the time while we waited for the court to establish a temporary custody schedule. I didn't tell Noah and Emma the full truth. How could I? They were only 5 years old. One evening, Emma looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" For a moment, I couldn't answer. I knelt down beside her. "Mommy and Daddy are having some grown-up problems. But no matter what happens, we both love you very much." She wrapped her little arms around my neck. I don't want our family to be broken. Neither did I. But some things were already beyond fixing. A few days later, I received the divorce papers. Olivia wasn't just asking for a divorce. She was asking for primary custody of Noah and Emma. She also claimed that I had become emotionally distant from the family because I prioritized work over my wife and children. When I finished reading the documents, I couldn't believe it. The woman who had spent months lying to me was now trying to convince the court that I had failed our family. I immediately called my attorney. He sounded calm. "I expected this." "You did. Ryan, these cases often become battles over reputation. They're trying to create a story that benefits their side. What do? We answer with facts." The pressure didn't stop there. One afternoon, as I left my office, a black luxury sedan pulled into the parking lot. An older man stepped out. I recognized him immediately. Olivia's father, Richard Bennett. He was wearing an expensive tailored suit and looked as confident as ever. "Ryan," he said, "we need to talk." I wasn't interested. "I don't think we do." He sighed. "Please. It'll only take a minute." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We walked to a quiet corner of the parking lot. Richard folded his hands behind his back. "I've known Olivia her entire life. So have I." "No." He shook his head. "You've known the version she chose to show you." I frowned. "What are you trying to say?" I'm saying people make mistakes. You don't destroy a family because of one mistake. I stared at him. One mistake. She had an affair for 3 months. He looked away for a brief moment. Then, he said something that shocked me. It doesn't matter anymore. You need to think about your future. My future. Accept the settlement. Walk away. Let Olivia have primary custody. You'll still see the children. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to give up my kids? I'm asking you to avoid a very public legal fight. I took a step closer. I'm not negotiating my children. His expression hardened. You have no idea how expensive this is going to become. I don't care. We have resources. I know. We have influence. I know. And we don't lose. I looked him directly in the eyes. There's a first time for everything. Without another word, I walked away. I didn't look back. That evening, I told my attorney about the conversation. He listened carefully. When I finished, he nodded. I figured they'd try something like this. Can they really influence the case? He answered honestly. They can hire outstanding lawyers. They can investigate every part of your life. They can make this process exhausting. But they can't change the facts. That sentence stayed with me. They couldn't change the facts. And the facts were finally on my side. A few days later, another surprise arrived. Olivia's attorneys requested financial records, employment history, medical information that was legally relevant to the proceedings, and a long list of other documents through the discovery process. It was clear what they were doing. They weren't looking for the truth. They were looking for anything they could use against me. My attorney smiled when he saw the request. Good. I looked at him in confusion. Good. They're fishing. When people don't have strong evidence, they start hoping you'll make a mistake. I won't. I know. Meanwhile, life at home became even more important. Every evening, Noah asked if we could build another Lego castle. Emma insisted that I read the same bedtime story every single night. Sometimes they laughed so hard that I forgot, if only for a few minutes, everything that was happening. Those moments reminded me why I refused to quit. This wasn't about winning. It was about protecting the two people who trusted me more than anyone else in the world. One Friday afternoon, Michael Harris called again. I found something. What is it? It isn't about the affair. It's about Daniel. I immediately drove to his office. Michael placed another file on the desk. We've confirmed that Daniel knew Olivia was married before the relationship started. I nodded. I assumed that. There's more. He opened the file. We also found messages suggesting he encouraged her to hide the relationship from you. I looked at the printed pages. One message read, Daniel, just keep telling Ryan you're working late. He'll believe you. Another read, Olivia, he trusts me. He has no reason to question anything. I closed my eyes. Reading those words hurt just as much as the first time I had opened her phone. Not because I was surprised. Because it reminded me how easily my trust had been used against me. The trial date was finally scheduled. It was only 6 weeks away. As I walked out of my attorney's office that afternoon, I stood on the courthouse steps for a long moment. The city around me was alive. People hurried to work. Tourists laughed. Cars filled the streets. Life continued as if nothing had changed. But mine had. In 6 weeks. A judge would hear everything. The lies. The affair. The evidence. The threats. And for the first time since my marriage began falling apart, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger. Not sadness. Hope. Because the truth was finally about to be heard. People imagine a courtroom as a place where dramatic speeches instantly change everything. Real life isn't like that. A courtroom is quieter, colder. Every word matters. Every document matters. Every answer can change someone's future. The morning of the trial, I barely slept. I woke up before sunrise and stood in the kitchen, staring out the window while drinking a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. My hands were shaking, not because I was afraid for myself. I was thinking about Noah and Emma. Everything that happened that day would affect their lives for years to come. That thought weighed on me more than anything else. At 8:30 that morning, I arrived at the courthouse with my attorney. The building was already busy. Families, attorneys, court staff, people waiting for hearings of every kind. As we walked through the security checkpoint, my attorney looked at me. "Remember one thing." I nodded. "What?" "Stay calm. No matter what happens. They'll be watching how you respond." "I understand." He gave me a reassuring smile. "You've done everything you could. Now, let the evidence do its job." A few minutes later, I saw Olivia. She was standing with her attorneys. She looked confident, perfectly dressed. Her parents stood beside her. Richard Bennett looked at me for a brief moment before turning away. No one spoke. The silence between us said enough. When the judge entered the courtroom, everyone stood. The hearing began. Olivia's attorney spoke first. He painted a picture of a struggling marriage. He claimed Olivia had felt abandoned because I spent too much time working. He argued that she had been the children's primary caregiver and deserved primary custody. Listening to him was surreal. It felt as though he was describing someone else's life. Not mine, not ours. Then it was our turn. My attorney stood and calmly began presenting our case. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult anyone. He simply presented facts. The timeline of the affair, the hotel receipts, the financial records, the photographs. Every document had been properly obtained and organized. The courtroom grew quieter with every page. Then came the messages. My attorney displayed several printed conversations. The judge carefully read each one. One message stood out more than any other. "Daniel, just keep telling Ryan you're working late. He'll believe you." Then Olivia's reply. "He trusts me completely." The courtroom fell silent. Even Olivia lowered her eyes. Next came the financial records. My attorney explained that thousands of dollars from our joint account had been used for hotel stays, expensive dinners, gifts, and vacations unrelated to family expenses. The judge slowly,